Hi everybody, welcome to the farm. Today we're going to talk about fasteners. Now fasteners are very important not only to people who have farms and tractors and things like that, but they're also important to machinists as well. I'm not only a machinist, but I also have a small farm with a couple horses on it, so fasteners are very important to me. Uh, from cotter pins, clevis pins, threaded fasteners, I'm going to take you through and show you a couple of examples to get you more familiarized. Now this is going to be a very basic video for those of you who are not in my machine tool technology class, but you still might find something worth watching. So join me and we're going to take a walk around the shop and I'll show you a couple different examples of threaded fasteners that I use all the time. Okay, so this is the first example of a threaded fastener that I have here, and this is called a wing nut. Now, the reason it's called a wing nut is because it has these flanges on either side that make it easy for you to twist on and twist off using your thumb. Now, this isn't the highest quality wing nut that you could have. This is made of stamped sheet metal, but it does do the job for this particular application. All this is the handle to a string trimmer. Some people call them weed whackers. That's actually a brand name, so you know, unless Weed Whacker wants to sponsor me, then we're not going to be calling them by the Weed Whacker name. Now, there's a couple other components here that are also very important to holding this fastener on and holding this handle in place. One of which is this piece right here. This is a lock washer, and this is a split lock washer. And the split lock washer is designed to be just slightly open, right there. And what that does is that kind of creates a little bit of a spring action. Now, when that's pressed, I don't know if I'll be able to do this by hand. When it's pressed down, yeah, I can't do that by hand. It actually resists against the fastener. It pushes up against that bottom side. That keeps a constant pressure on the threads. Now, this type of tool is subject to vibration. Now, if this were to vibrate, eventually this bolt would come loose, and the bolt and the wing nut would fall into the abyss, into a portal, into another dimension, and then you will never be able to find them again. The other component here is a simple flat washer. Now, what's the purpose of this flat washer? The purpose of the flat washer is to make sure that the bearing surface, that's this surface right here, that's the surface that all the load is put on by the combination of the lock washer and the wing nut. What that does is that makes sure that the load is distributed evenly. This is plastic. The wider surface area you have, the better off you're going to be. So if we assemble this back together, I'm going to make sure that the flat washer goes first because that's our bearing surface. And then we're going to put our lock washer. That keeps everything locked in place. And lastly, we're going to put the wing nut. And you have to make sure that you do it in that order. If you get that order messed up, all of your bearing surface will be on either the lock washer or on the wing nut, in case you forget. Washers are not spare parts. They're not designed to get lost. Oh, well, I forgot to put it back together. I forgot to put the washer on. Well, I'm just going to throw the washer out. Don't ever do that because now you're putting all of the pressure on a surface that was not designed to have that pressure. So you need to make sure that you have a nice full bearing surface on the piece that needs to be clamped together so that you don't have any failure at any point. Okay, next we're going to head out into the riding arena here, and we're going to check out another type of fastener that is very useful for a number of different applications. There's the horses. Say hi, horses. This piece of equipment right here, it's actually homemade. It is known as a drag, and what it does is as the horses, you know, they walk around and they'll tear up these rocks, and they'll leave divots and stuff when we're riding. So what we have to do is occasionally we run the drag over it, and that kind of evens out the surface. Kind of think of it like a rake. We pull it behind an ATV, and that evens out the surface, so it's we don't have any deep holes or anything, so no one's gonna break an ankle or anything. Now on the end of this, there is this lock basically, and what this is doing is it's helping keep the chain on that rod right there. This is actually a piece of workout equipment that's been repurposed for this, but it does the job. So as you can see, I can easily slide this off. There's nothing really that's holding it on aside from this piece right here. Now, this is an example of a set screw. It's a thumb screw type set screw. You could also get a type that is used with a Phillips head, flat head, you name it. You can get a different type of head for this this type of application, which would probably be good. I should probably repurpose or get a different type of set screw, because this one has a tendency to work itself loose. Also, some Loctite would help in this situation, or thread fastener. So by tightening this up and tightening that down, that keeps this collar from falling off, which in turn keeps the piece of fence that we use as the drag onto the pole here. And that's all a set screw does. It keeps a round object or any object fixed on a shaft. Another thing that I could do to make this even more secure is grind a flat onto this surface. That would give a better bearing surface for the set screw, and it would be less prone to working itself loose. And that's also a good application for anything that spins. If you have something on a shaft that you don't want to spin and you're going to fasten it with a set screw, it's always good to grind a flat onto the set screw to keep it from moving. Back up here at the barn, or it's more like a shed, but we use it to keep feed and stuff. We have this old trailer, and this has an example of what's called a cotter pin. Now this is a standard type cotter pin. Let's see if I can get you a better look, see at that. And what that does is it holds this wheel onto the axle. Now it has a loop down at the bottom that's bigger than the hole that it's threaded through, and then it has two wings on either side, and what happens is those gets bent over to prevent the pin from falling out. It's a very basic, very useful type of setup. It's been mostly replaced by what are called hitch pins, which I'll show you in a second. Because the fact that these can break when you're trying to remove them, I'm gonna have to replace these wheels, and honestly, this is probably going to break off. This is so rusted at this point that I'm gonna have to replace this completely, probably with a hitch pin. But it does work. It's a very cheap solution. These are made for less than a penny probably, and you can put these on any number of different types of applications, and they can function for the lifetime of the device. It's only when stuff starts to fail that you actually have to replace them. Back here at the John Deere, we have an example of another cotter pin right here. It's your standard cotter pin. It has a loop on this side, and then on the other side are the two tines that are bent over, and they're bent over into this fastener right here. This is called a castle nut. Now the reason that it's called a castle nut is because if you looked at it from the side, it actually kind of looks like the crenellations of a castle, that zigzag pattern that castles are known for. People, I guess, in the fantasy movies would stand behind them and shoot their bows and stuff like that. But in the case of the castle nut fastener, what that does is it actually is held onto the shaft not only by the threads, but it's kept from turning by the cotter pin. Now that standard cotter pin, it's in there. That's not gonna let this move. And that's another example of preventing parts that vibrate frequently from coming apart. It's a very ingenious design. You know, you've got not only a pin, but you've got the threads holding everything together. So this should never come apart unless you are the person taking it apart. Over here we have an example of a cotter pin and a clevis pin. Now you'll notice that this cotter pin looks a little bit different from the other ones. This is brand new, I just put it on here. This cotter pin is called a hitch pin. It's also called the gets lost every time you take it out because you forget to put it back in the clevis pin. The other pin here, and that's a little bit harder to get out, is the clevis pin. Now the clevis pin has, most of the time, this is a replacement one, so it's adjustable. The clevis pin, this one, has a bunch of holes in it along the length, and that allows the hitch pin, the hitch cotter pin, to go into one of those holes to hold all this together. Now, why would I have a setup like this? And it's very important to be able to take this pin out so I can rotate this wheel, and that way I can pull the mower deck on this tractor in and out if I need to sharpen the blades, or if I need to replace the blades, if I need to replace the belt or anything like that. So it's very useful to be able to get that apart very quickly. Here's another example of a clevis pin and a cotter pin, a hitch pin, holding something together. This is the hanger on the mower deck, and that keeps the mower deck attached to the tractor. And what it's doing here is it's holding the actual mower deck. This piece of angle iron is holding the hanger. It's holding those two pieces together, and that allows this to rotate. You can actually lift and raise and lower the deck to cut grass at different heights. And this pin allows this all to rotate, this whole setup to rotate in order to get higher or lower. If this was simply bolted on and this was all clamped together, then this wouldn't rotate well, and that wouldn't be good. Then the deck wouldn't be able to raise and lower properly. So you need, this is an application where a threaded fastener would not do the job. A clevis pin is much, much better for this particular situation. Here's one last look at one of those clevis pins and cotter pins. As you can see, this is an adjustable clevis pin. You can get these at Harbor Freight or Home Depot or whatever, sometimes even Walmart. And this is designed to replace a pin that has been lost. Now, I'm not the original owner of this tractor, and even if I was, this part might have broken, or this part might have gotten lost while I was fixing something or something like that. So it's very important that these types of fasteners are designed to fit in a lot of standard size holes. So you'll get a lot of different variation. It's always important to measure the hole that one of these pins is going to go into so that you get the correct size cotter pin for an application. And it's very easy to get this put together. Let's get you set down here. Very easy to put this together. All you have to do is put the pin, get the holes lined up first. Put the pin inside the hole, and then put the cotter pin in through the other side. And that keeps the whole setup together. That's not going to come apart. Because this pin springs back and forth, and they're quite difficult to get on and off sometimes. Everything's going to be held together. This isn't going to fall apart. And this wheel will do its job. The last type of fastener that I want to talk to you about today is called a rivet. Now, a rivet is a permanent type of fastener, meaning once it goes together, that's it. It's not going to come apart. What this is this is the chimney on the grill out here, the charcoal grill outside. And we don't want water to get inside there, so we put a cap on it. And you know, if it was raining or something like that, we wouldn't want water to get inside the grill because that can cause rust and things like that. So we've got the stainless steel cap that can get rained on. The rain can wash off and run away. How do we hold it together? Now, making this out of one solid piece would be very difficult. Even if it were like machined out of a solid piece, that would make it even very, very expensive, and you know, it wouldn't necessarily be worth all of the extra machining time. So what we can do is we can make it in 2 parts or even 3 parts, because this is actually, this little tab right here is welded on to this part. It might be honestly, I'm not sure how that's attached, but to connect it to the cylinder that forms the chimney itself, we're going to use what's called a rivet. Now, this is a rivet that it had a pin on the inside of it, and the pin is kind of shaped like a nail. Now, what happens is we put the rivet inside of the hole, we pull the nail out, it actually breaks off, and that kind of looks like this over here. When we pull out the nail, or nail-looking thing, this little small section of rivet pin breaks off, and it makes the rivet itself fatter at one end. That keeps the 2 pieces from coming apart and serves as a permanent fastener. Now, rivets are very difficult to remove. They need to be drilled out, and sometimes they're made out of hardened materials. So you should only use rivets if you're going to be holding 2 things together that should never ever come apart. So that's a couple of the different fasteners that you'll find, not only on a farm, but in a machine shop as well. Roll pins, dowel pins, clevis pins, cotter pins, all of these are used in the shop on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes they break, sometimes they need to be replaced. So you need to be familiar with them and be able to recognize them, so not only can you communicate to maybe me if we're in the classroom, or for those of you who are trying to repair your stuff at home, you need to be able to communicate with Google. You can Google things like clevis pin and order stuff from Amazon, or go to places like Tractor Supply or Harbor Freight or something like that and ask them what part that you need. This way, the people that communicate with you, the people that are showing you where the stuff is, can get you to the right spot and get you the size of the part you need. Thank you for watching, and good luck. Hope you fix something, and hope you learned something.